but I don't use African American. I'm not disputing with those who decide to use it. But with me, I don't use African American because I think that should be reserved for Africans, contemporary Africans who come to America. And that can include more than just people who are racialized as Black, because they're not just Black people, so-called, on the African continent.
Elon Musk.
Yeah.
We could put him in the African American.
Right.
And Charlize Theron, right?
Yeah.
No one was going to like that.
I know.
No one's going to like that.
I know, but
But you know what? Let me stop you there, just because. So one thing that is distinct about, African descendants of slaves is that their ancestry is difficult or impossible to trace beyond a certain point, right? And it just struck me right now that, wanting to reserve African American for those from Africa who come to the US, we want to call them African Americans. Why aren't we calling them Nigerian American or Ghanaian American or South African American, for example? And the reason why, the ADOS would be called African American is because we can't go further than that. And so it becomes its own sort of delineation. What do you think about that? Have you thought about that at all?
That's interesting. I mean, I certainly think that one of the things I like about the way you laid out the differentiations among people in different areas and regions, even if they have the same ancestry, is that it's a more realistic view of human beings and the cultural and social environment that they're actually in.
Right.
And so I like that. It's like I apply the same kind of thought that you stated for Africans, Nigeria, Ghanaian, Congolese, and other places, to folks from the Caribbean. My wife is from Barbados. There are folks from Jamaica, and that's a distinct heritage and history.
Yeah.
They're all a part of, they have a same Caribbean, overall location, but there's distinctions among them. And I think it's really important to keep the distinctions, or at least to acknowledge them, the distinctions, be aware of them, because again, it's a more realistic view of our human reality and our human experience. But I think this is where the ideas of America are so powerful. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Diversity within unity, a unified diversity. So those differences are there, and we don't want to erase those differences. Let's just likely say, variety is the spice of life. Those differences are good and cool if we look at it and treat it in the right way. If we don't set up some type of specious hierarchy of, based on skin color. I mean, those differences can be beautiful, and those differences can be, to me, see, I'm a New Yorker. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My family's from the South, but I was born in
there you go.
So growing up, it was so great to be around Irish folks and Jewish folks and Polish folks and, Italians and this and that. And it was so, and so I'm used to that kind of variety and differentiation. There are certain people in the United States, if they stay more local and the folks that they're around are mostly the same in terms of how they've been racialized, then their experience might not be as broad or cosmopolitan as that, But I mean, that's how I came up. So, when you talk about all those, varieties, So, but the thing is, now let's talk about another aspect of this that we have to acknowledge. Now, you said descendants of slaves. Okay. So in this country, yes, descendants of slaves who have created culture and cultural styles, cultural idioms, cultural forms within and through which they express their highest values and meanings.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one thing that is interesting. There was a great interview with Ellison, I think it's from 1958, called Some Questions, Some Answers. And the interviewer asked him, well, what would you think of the term Black culture? He says, whether it's white culture or Black culture, I think that's racist. He said this in 1958.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
He says, look, if you look at Haitians, people from Haiti, they have more of a Catholic upbringing. There's differences. Just because they have similar skin tones and we're closer to, their African heritage than others who, because I mean, all of humanity came from Africa. Okay, we're
Right.
talking about
That's the other thing.
we're talking about more recent.
Right. Yeah.
So he said, what we share, talking about what we as what he called Negro Americans or American Negroes share with folks in the Caribbean and folks in Africa and other places that were colonized. We share a hatred for the oppression and for the dehumanization that came from enslavement and colonization. Mm-hmm. So that's a shared political identification. Mm-hmm. He says, but its cultural value is almost nil.
Right.
So there's shared political. So when you talk about politics, you're talking about power, and you're talking about, resources, and you're talking about, ways of engaging in the pluralistic conflict, and competition over resources. There are shared identifications we have because of that shared experience. That doesn't mean we have the same culture.